Some really sad, but I think important, significant information we wanted to bring to you. This is a report from the Washington Post that some of our most critical workers, grocery workers, are starting to die of coronavirus, Saagar. And I mean, no surprise, given the risks that these individuals are taking on a daily basis, oftentimes without hazard pay, oftentimes without the protective equipment that they need and that they deserve. And this just underscores the real risk that a lot of relatively low-wage workers are facing out there right now on the front lines.
It really does. I mean, you're looking at the people who are included in these deaths. It's like a Trader Joe's worker, a greeter at a Giant store, 2 Walmart employees from the same Chicago area store, and it's dozens of grocery store workers, according to the Washington Post, have already tested positive. And there's been a rise of worker infections and deaths that's probably going to ripple across, in the long term, a grocery store's ability in order to service its customers. So it has a lot of bad effects. And this is the issue, which is that, even in my grocery store here in downtown Washington, D.C., I did not see workers with adequate protective gear until yesterday.
Wow.
Every time before I would go back, I would see people without masks, without gloves. I mean, there were more shoppers in personal protective gear than there were actual grocery store employees. And it's just, that's unconscionable. And I wouldn't doubt that that is completely system-wide. It's not just them. It's not just grocery store workers. We have this report from the New York Post that 33 workers for the MTA, for the Metro Transit Authority, have died in New York City.
Wow.
And that belies the 5,600 workers across MTA who are now in quarantine and the 1,100 who have tested positive. People who are part of essential services are getting hammered by the coronavirus. And it's just a terrible situation where there's nobody is lifting up them or talking about how these grocery store workers need more like hazard pay.
Right.
I mean, if you're still making minimum wage doing this, I think it's totally wrong. You're literally putting your health at risk. In many cases, these people don't even have health care, or they have very limited health care, limited benefits.
Oftentimes not even paid sick leave. Remember, they passed that bill through Congress that gave a giant exemption to large companies, so they still don't have to give their workers paid sick leave. And that's why we are seeing a wave of strikes and other actions across the country to try to demand, look, people take pride in their work and they want to help out in their community and do their job and do what they can to help serve people during this time. But you deserve to be paid commensurate with the risk that you're taking. People are literally risking their lives right now to be able to check you on at the cash register, to be able to keep the shelves stocked as people make a run on various things. There's that worker that I quoted from a Purdue chicken plant down in Georgia who said, we're out here risking our lives for chicken.
Yeah. With
no additional pay, without the protective gear that we need, also that you can have your chicken nuggets in the freezer section when and how you want it. And look, all that people are asking is that their lives be treated as fundamentally valuable. And we're not seeing that with grocery clerks. We're not seeing that. We talked yesterday to someone from the firefighters union. Their men and women have been really hard hit, don't have the protective gear they need, which is unconscionable. And we also see it, of course, very much in the medical community. And this is the other article we wanted to highlight. 100 doctors and nurses have died combating coronavirus. Obviously, these folks are the most at risk. And, one viewer actually raised to me something that I think is worth mentioning. Residents, medical residents who work incredibly long hours, they're often the lowest paid people in the building, also aren't getting that protective gear, and they have massive student loans. No one's talking about any loan forgiveness or anything for them either, even though they're, again, out there risking their lives right now, doing the work, making this thing happen.
I know many people in the medical community, and they're all dealing with that, which is that, it's so depressing because I watched a BBC report. So it's like a foreign report of what's it like in America? And they were looking and interviewing doctors who had on, they're using garbage bags as personal protective equipment. They don't have the gowns and the masks and the PPE that they need. And it's not just them, it's NYPD we've covered here. Something like, as of last week, there were 500 people who had tested positive for coronavirus. At any one time, there were a couple thousand of the NYPD who were on sick leave, staying home, self-isolating. So everybody who still has to report to work, interact with the general public, is dealing with this. And all of them, they don't just need, your thoughts in order to raise them up. They need some actual extra pay. They need personal protective equipment. They need to make sure that we understand what we're actually asking these people to do. They're literally putting their lives at risk in many, many cases. Already, we've seen police die all over the country. Detroit, NYPD, so many others. 33 MTA workers, doctors, and nurses are dying. Grocery store workers, and these are some of the most vulnerable people in our normal economic life, and in some cases the ones who keep us safe, and we just have to make sure that they're taken care of.
And you can see why, and we've shown this map a couple times, but I think it's really important because it does show the class dynamics of this virus, which of course, knows no bounds in terms of race, class. There is a little bit of more of a gender burden on men than women, but in general, I mean, this can hit and affect absolutely anyone. But you do see it hitting poor and working class communities the hardest. If you look at the map of New York City, Manhattan has done comparatively better to the more working class neighborhoods, working class boroughs, Bronx, Queens in particular, Brooklyn. And you can see from these numbers why. You can see that you have two groups of people in the working class right now, those who have been laid off, basically, who are economically screwed, and those who've been shoved down onto the front lines to do this work, often without hazard pay, often without paid sick leave, often without the protective equipment or the basic sort of hygiene and sanitation that we're all supposed to be practicing. No care for their lives whatsoever. And these are the consequences.
Yeah, so they really are. It's terrible.
I think the gentleman from IAFF, the International Association of Firefighters, that we had on yesterday said it best. He said, don't go up there and call us heroes. Just give us some freaking masks. Give us some masks, some gloves. Show us that you value us by your actions, not just by your words. And I think that's a critical piece. All right, we're going to have more Rising for you after this.